Okay, excellent. Thank you, Sadlin. So, of the vehicles at the very least, our prices are looking like $500 for the Mitsubishi 3000 GT with 2 dots in speed, 1 in maneuverability, and 1 in durability. 600 for the Honda S2000 with 2 dots in speed, 2 in maneuverability, and 1 in durability. 700, a bit outside our price range for the BMW. It would have 2 in speed, 2 in maneuverability, and 2 in durability. Or 350 for the Nissan Frontier with 1 in speed, 1 in maneuverability, and 3 in durability. Again, our wealth is $603. A nice little three-way split thus far, with one desiring to take a look at the suits they have on offer, one desiring to buy the Nissan truck, and one wanting to look at the sweet knife available. I can, of course, roll a dice if we don't have anything available. Moose, I think that you might be right, though speaking with Elena, as you suggest, might be valuable in terms of providing us with some discounts. I assume that you were the one who voted for option I on the straw poll? Excellent. For the sake of... looks like we have another vote for the discounts, which I believe puts us at a plurality. We'll see if we can chat up Elena then. Curious about the knife and curious about better prices as well. So is that a... what are they called? A Klingon knife? A Tajdik? No, Elena says. Her pronunciation is flawless, quite unlike my own. And then you can't afford it. It's solid silver. For killing werewolves, I guess. Her tone says she doesn't believe in werewolves. Christ, are there werewolves in Tucson? Maybe you should buy it. And I'm not selling it anyway because I think the guy who sold it might actually come back, she says. She unlocks the case and hands you the crooked silver blade. This has to be the one the Tremere was holding in the video. Elena goes back to messing around on her phone. I'm not paying this much for junk, and I'm not scared of Elena's Glock. I lean on her to get the prices down. Maybe there are some cheaper places nearby. We can roam up and down the block and look in on other pawn shops, other places that might get me where we need to for cheap. We are well educated and know our way around finances. Even criminal ones. We use our phone to do some research and learn about Covenant's financing to help us haggle the prices down. We need an ally in this city, and so tell Elena that we might be down on our luck now, but plan to move up fast. Our charm and leadership skills can bring her around. It didn't, before I continue, it didn't quite allow us to build too much aside from answering some questions. We decided that we were a naval officer with some military background capable of survival and paper pushing, and that we were a member of Clan Gangrel. If you would like, when I finish reading through these, I can go to the show stats page and we can see what decisions it made for us on that front. We need allies, and we like pretty girls with cool tattoos. Thus, we flirt with Elena and try to feel out some kind of alliance. Absolutely, Moose, we can make that happen. We shake Elena down for clues, lying to imply that we already know more about her than that more than her about that silver knife, rather. We do need to know more about this silver knife, and thus take our time talking with Elena about it, paying attention to her body language. Or do we merely go back to shopping? Here's our stats page. Our name, no one. Our clan, Gangrel. Our sire, Lampago. Of the 11th generation, we have 3 of 5 dots in humanity, currently 1 of 5 dots in hunger as we've stayed well fed, 3 dots in our willpower. We are uninjured, having no points in our wounds thus far, and 0 violations of the Masquerade as it stands currently. Within our attributes, we've 1 of 5 dots in strength, 2 of 5 in dexterity, and 4 of 5 in stamina, 3 of 5 in charisma, and 1 each in manipulation and composure. Our intelligence stands at a 3 out of 5, our wits at a 2 out of 5, and our resolve at a 4 out of 5. Our skills stand currently at 1 of 3 dots in athletics, clandestine, combat, 2 dots in drive, and 1 in firearms. We're wholly unable to commit any intimidation with 0 of 3 dots available. 1 dot in leadership and persuasion, 0 in streetwise, and 1 in subterfuge. We've 2 dots in academics, quite unaware of anything around us with 0 dots available, and 1 each in investigation, technology, and survival. We have 1 dot each in animalism and the protean disciplines. It's my understanding, Sadlin, that Drive is fairly specifically focused on vehicles as a whole. Of our convictions, we've nothing in Protect the Weak or Rule the Weak, standing somewhere in the middle. We also stand somewhere in the middle between perpetuation of our existence or regretting our sins. We lean more towards respecting the traditions than defying them, but stand in the middle between seeking a higher purpose or seeking luxury and comfort. We do have some other options here if we'd like to see some of these things, or we can go back to the story. And I'm happy to move back to our stats page or explore any of the other pages when the poll here is complete. I'm not sure a link to the stats page is available since it's simply something that's existent within the app that is running the game. So far, we've 2 votes for C and 1 for E. Um, Appreciate that. Let's see. Is that someone we should probably get rid of in here? Well, I don't even see them in the chat. Knows how to do swords? Looks like we are going to continue with being well educated and knowing our way around some finances, even if they're criminal ones. We ask Elena a few careful questions about her financing, just to give you a clear place to start. She seems more amused than worried by your questions, and soon you have a few search terms to enter. Even shying away from Elena's illegal activities, you see all sorts of inefficiencies in her business model. At least, you think you do. You only have access to public information like her lease, but when you ask Elena a few questions about where her money is going, you realize that while she's a capable businesswoman, you're just a little bit better. She chews her lip, then says, "Tell you what. You come back tomorrow and log in a shift fixing my payroll, and you promise not to act all weird, and I'll give you a discount." After a little more negotiation, it's a deal, and she agrees to give you a modest discount. Needing an ally in the city, do we tell Elena that we might be down on our luck now, but plan to move up fast, hoping that our charm and leadership skills can bring her around even further? Do we need allies and like pretty girls with cool tattoos, and thus try to flirt with Elena to try to feel out some kind of alliance? Do we shake her down for clues, lying again to imply that we already know more than her about that silver knife? Or do we try to take our time talking with Elena about the silver knife, desirous to know more and paying attention to her body language? Or do we simply go back to shopping? Now, on the last vote, we did have a runner-up to flirt and try to build up our relationship. We can continue down that path, or we can create a new poll to see which of these options we would like to proceed with. The choice, as always, fellow denizens of the night, is up to you. That's 2 in favor of flirting, and it looks like I need to fix my chat box in the near future. These options, as always, Sadlin, are quite excellent. Ah, I see, I see. All right. What are your tattoos, you ask? Elena hesitates for a moment, then shrugs out of her red leather jacket, revealing the biomechanical sleeve tattoos. When my grandmother's first boyfriend died, she turned to opium and art. I couldn't figure out where to get opium, so when my brother died, I read a lot of art books. You place a finger on one bicep, where Geiger's birth machine slowly tessellates into a blur of abstract mechanical shapes ringed by tentacles. She permits the contact for a moment, then slides her jacket back up. "You're going to be in Tucson for a while?" she asks. "Yeah," you say. "My number is on the wall," she says. "Call me if you, need help. With work. What is it you do? Wait. Don't tell me yet." A potential ally. This is good. When she turns back to you, she's smiling, though you can see her skepticism. She's going to figure out who you are, and that could be dangerous. We still have only $603, but the prices on some of these vehicles has decreased. We can spend $450 for the Mitsubishi, $540 for the Honda, or $315 for the Nissan Frontier, not being able to afford the BMW's price tag of $630. We also can look at swords, guns, a computer, or a suit. It certainly could, Nashan. Let's see where our votes lie. We don't have a fast, reliable way of getting anywhere, and unfortunately, if we don't have a vehicle, it's going to make it significantly more difficult to get between these cities that the prince has asked us to deliver messages to. Now, a computer might mitigate that. We could certainly flaunt the Masquerade some, trying to send some of these messages through electronic means, I imagine. Let me click through to find out some of these other prices. Looking at the price of guns, Elena says you don't want to drive around with a rifle or shotgun, so you scan the pistols and revolvers. Most are cheap, badly maintained, or overpriced. A few or all three. But finally, you spot a Springfield Armory XDM behind a Sig Sauer you can't afford. $360, Elena says, handing you the 45 so you can check how it feels. It looked bulky in the case, but it settles easily into your hands. Elena watches as you rack the slide and sight down the barrel. You'd need something bigger to knock down a vampire, or even an old and powerful ghoul, but this is the perfect anti-human weapon. One round will take a regular mortal out of the fight, and it fits under your peacoat without being too obvious. Unfortunately, you cannot afford both it and a vehicle. Data intrusion is an increasingly important aspect of modern life, and you can't do everything just by calling up the front desk and pretending to be the password inspector. Trailed by Elena, you inspect the heaps of laptops, tablets, and hybrids. You know that any computer you buy will only be a shell into which you pour your own expertise and torrented software, but nothing you see combines portability with flexibility in quite the way you need. Then you spot an odd mini laptop on the counter. My work, Elena says as you flip open the Raspberry Pi laptop. There's a finished version on a nearby shelf, but you're not interested in someone's personal machine. You want something you can shape yourself. You boot it up. It's fast. It has a ridiculous number of ports for its size. What's the Wi-Fi password, you ask? Elena taps a plastic sign. The connection is strong. It feels solid, too, despite how light it is. Damn, you're a little bit in love. How much, you ask? 540, Elena says. No refunds. I'll throw in a trash bag full of cables and peripherals. No refunds on them either. Unfortunately, we cannot afford both it and a vehicle. People around here don't seem to pawn clothes as often as they pawn guns, power tools, and Blu-rays of Click from 2006, but you discover a small collection of decent clothes, and an even smaller selection of really good clothes. Nice men's and women's clothes, and you start to mix and match. The Cucinelli blazer in pale gray linen is lightweight and drapes elegantly around your shoulders. You have trouble matching it, until you find a pair of slacks without any name. They're men's, like the ones Richard Gere wore in that Gigolo movie, but they look great with the gray linen, and somehow the eclectic pattern and loose fit works perfectly with the blazer. You're a long way from anywhere nice enough to need that, Elena says. That's why it's all only $405. Unfortunately, you can't afford both it and a vehicle. Most of Elena's swords are shitty mall katanas that you couldn't use to beat a chihuahua to death with. A few are the real deal and start at $2,500, but one has a price tag of only $300. Thank you, Sadlin, for all of your work. I think that we are nearing the end of this chapter, and we'll probably be ending the stream once the chapter is completed so as to provide a solid starting point for the next. Elena unlocks the case and hands you the Bavarian M1869. Someone refurbished this, but they also removed the quillon. It's supposed to be a bayonet, but now it's almost like a machete with a better balanced blade. And the balance is really good. You flick it through the air a few times, getting a feel for it. Now this is a vampire stopper. Heavy enough to chop through the limbs or necks, it's nonetheless a precision instrument, reliant on your agility and training. Is it authentic, you ask? You actually don't care, because unlike everyone else who comes in here, you might actually need to kill someone with this thing. Well, it was, Elena says, until the guy who used to own the place cut off the, what's the word? The handguard part, so he could practice a screamo with it. And since its value as an antique is ruined, you can afford it and still have enough cash left over to purchase a vehicle. The cost of the sword is $270. The cost of the vehicles available to us are $450 for the Mitsubishi, $540 for the Honda, or $315 for the Nissan, and we have $603. We could afford to buy the Cutlass as well as one of the vehicles, should we so desire. Doing that, I believe, puts us at the decision of the Nissan Frontier and the sword, should we not want something faster. A sword could come in handy should we need to do battle with some vampires. Or any other things that go bump in the night. What do we think, friends? I can create a... Indeed. With very little strength and very little combat ability, we're not really in a position to get into any kind of prolonged fight with any sort of beastly members of the evening. I imagine that Elena and her shop of potables will be visitable again in the near future once we've made a little more cash from running these objects. Though, that may not be the case. True, we can always run away should we need to. Tracy Chapman definitely approves of having a fast vehicle in the event of such situations. Moose thinks that we ought to spend a large portion of our money getting a fast and maneuverable car with lower durability, but the ability to get away from anything in a hurry. This will also help us get between cities and the desert roads, something that can be quite beneficial once the sun starts to rise. It would seem that our Keeper of Elysium, Astrophysicist, might agree, opting not to take the sword and instead move only for the car. In that case, we'll move forward with the Honda, spending $540 of our $603 in order to move forward and hopefully earn 1,000. It's hardly top of the line, but at least it'll be fun to drive until it suddenly explodes. I'll take it, you say. I didn't even get to my hard sell, Elena says. There's not a lot of bureaucracy here. You give Elena $540 and she gives you the keys, the registration, and a Garfield at the beach umbrella in case the roof sticks open and it rains. We're down to $63 and unable to purchase anything else. I think we're done shopping for now. It's 2:16 according to your DW watch when you pull out of Covenant Pawn Shop in your new Honda S2000. Sunrise is 6:29 a.m. It's still early, so you drive around for an hour just to find the cheapest gas stations and the fastest ways out of town. Then you accelerate smoothly onto East Broadway Boulevard near a plasma center and head for the garage address you got earlier. Magda lovingly sticks her head out the Honda S2000's passenger side window. When a shadow crosses the hood of your Honda, you look up and catch a glimpse of a wing eclipsing a streetlight. Was that Riga, Prince Leto's eagle? You find your spot in the underground parking garage. Right in front of it is a metal door with a keypad. You grab everything from your Honda, lock it once Magda is out, and enter the code. Inside is an office with peeling linoleum floors, an ancient metal desk with a rusty mini-fridge on it, and a sleeping bag. A short tile corridor ends in a jury-rigged shower and a drain. There's a clear plastic a clear plastic bag and some toiletries on the tile, and a bottle of 409 that won't do anything against the smell of mildew. There's no Wi-Fi. Still, it's better than sleeping in an abandoned semi-trailer, and your phone actually gets good reception. Even better, there are escape routes into the sewers that you can use. You loosen the grates and make sure you have a clear route into the sewers in case you're exposed. You're just getting settled in when you hear your door lock beep. The metal door opens, and there's Julian Sim. A new personal low, Julian says. He's wearing a glitch t-shirt and a smile. He starts to enter, then looks down and says, "You have to invite me in." Do you respond, "No, I fucking don't, Julian, because that's not how vampires work"? Or, "Come on in. Make yourself comfortable. There's no reason to be uncivil, after all." You tell him that there's only one, to give you one reason why you shouldn't pop your claws and draw lines on his face? Do we play it cool, but smell an opportunity here? Julian was always brilliant, after all. Fine. Enter freely and of your own free will. Now what do you want? Or do you tell him we're actually trying to do legitimate work, so if you could leave, we'd appreciate it. We have a chance with the Camarilla here, and Julian is nothing but trouble. We are, by Julian's estimation, still likely in Julian's debt, despite delivering those USBs. There was a time that we stole Julian's lime green geo-tracker and $300, making our escape from the work the Camarilla had beset upon us, along with Julian. That said, every time we've encountered this vampire so far, he has seemed to bring trouble in his wake. It may just be that it's better to ignore his presence altogether. The choice, Kindred, is up to you. I agree. The idea that vampires must be invited to cross a threshold is a very entertaining one. As though magic lies in the barrier between places that we designate as our own homes, even if those homes be temporary. Barring any further chat votes in the next few seconds, we'll move forward with telling Julian that vampires need not permission to cross a threshold. Still, Julian says, I think it's important to set boundaries, watching your Lobo. But if you're going to be difficult, He tosses you a tiny webcam. This was in your ceiling, by the way. Give me your phone and I'll take care of the tracking there. He looks so young, you think, as he wanders in and out of your shitty crash pad, sweeping for bugs. For some reason, you expected him to age. You look at yourself in your Honda's side view mirror. You haven't aged either. Man, it's been a while, Julian says, leaning against your doorframe. I remember the nights we spent keeping that elder asleep with offerings of blood. The days curled up together in the desert. Wasn't it romantic? Do you respond that that never happened? You made up our relationship, Julian, and tried to sell it as a novel until the old Prince of Tucson threatened to execute you? Or are we not saying anything about what happened while we were fledglings? How have you been? You ask. Or C. I was a confused young fledgling, and you were my mentor because our sire was gone. I won't make that mistake again. Or D. Do we respond that it was until suddenly it wasn't? We left Julian for a reason, after all. I agree. The further we find out about our integration with Julian, the more interesting things seem to get. And it does seem like Julian is offering to assist us in the matters of us being tracked, but at what cost? Our interactions with Julian up until this point haven't necessarily been the greatest, though we did leave him fairly early on, sticking him with the job the Camarilla stuck us both with, and then running away with his money and his vehicle. But there's always been history there. Maybe we don't want to talk about what happened when we were first sired, first embraced and brought to this life of undeath that will plague us for the rest of time. Maybe we do want to talk about it. Maybe it's important that he knows that we were just confused young fledglings. I think you're right in that regard. Would you rather be more blunt with Julian, or would you rather play it a bit safer and offer the small talk that Julian seems to so desire? Blunt it is. It was until it suddenly wasn't. I do seem to recall you ditching me, Julian says. And for what? Because you got squeamish? He looks thoughtful. Okay, maybe I was getting squeamish too. Maybe that work was horrible and I was horrible for staying on. But I'm not here to apologize. I'm here because I also have work. Work that concerns the work that concerns the Warlocks, and I want your help. You half expected Julian to reach for you, but he's excited about some new project now. He was always like that. I've been working with Jasper Knowles lately. Terrible what happened to Jasper. Of course, it's also terrible what he did to that sewer rat, and that Outlander, and that... Anyway, what's worse is that lately I've been working with Jasper, not canite to canite, but man to man, as it were. You're starting to monologue, Julian. That's a dangerous habit. Why don't you just tell me what you want me to know? Is option A. Option B, wanting to know more. Though Julian is dangerous, we do love his grand visions of the future. We tell him, you've been busy. Or option C, why do we get the feeling that whatever you're doing is even more dangerous than what the Camarilla wants me to do? Maybe we ought to stick with Prince Leto after all. We'll allow a minute and a half here for this decision. All right. I think antagonizing Julian is an excellent option. And barring any further votes, we'll move forward with that in about 10 seconds. Hard living has made you dull, no one, the Banu Hakim says. Fine. Since the Convention of Thorns, the Masquerade has protected us from mortal scrutiny. We hide what we are. We live in the shadows. But that can't last. He tosses the USB webcam up and down. The Second Inquisition should have taught us that. One day soon, humans will learn the truth. This is inevitable. Do you know why Jasper Knowles decided to end his experiments with that Nosferatu? Because someone filmed it when it got out. Then he called to me to turn the video from a Masquerade breach into a trailer to a new student horror film. I had to fake some date stamps, but the Tremere paid me well. That's going to happen more and more, no one. And eventually it's going to be happening every night. All the time. Always on. Constant streaming. We must stop offering a hard wall against this inevitability and start creating a guided path for the mortals. We have another choice. You're talking about a whole new way that humans will be forced to view the world. That's ambitious, Julian, and fascinating. I'm familiar with this kind of speculation. There's another option. A curtailed world of walled gardens and limited information. That's the route we believe the kindred must take. Maybe you're right, but that's all years from now. This year, this night, all I want is enough to survive. Or D, I'm not turning humans into pets of the kindred so we can eke out another 100 years of unlife. All meted responses. Of course, we have our own views of streaming here amongst the kindred. Personally, I think I'm a fan of it either being fascinating or being familiar with this kind of I definitely understand. Of the two, I think being too busy for this right now, especially given the state of our affairs, being caught between the Camarilla and our hunger, definitely makes a lot of sense. Foregoing any other votes along those lines, I somehow doubt that Julian's going to go away anytime soon, and our interactions with him will only continue. Having chosen option C, Julian says, then I'll help you survive. That's why I'm here. Tomorrow, now that you have this beautiful machine, Julian says, banging the hood of your Honda, Prince Leto will give you one of 3 USBs. Would you like to know what's on them? He doesn't let you answer. One warns the Bruja Paternoster about renovations to his hospital that will expose his followers. One informs the Tremere and Vidya Call that her mentor, Jasper Knowles, is dead, and that her funding is cut off because her facility's contacts with mundane biomedical research firms threaten the Masquerade. One tells the Ventru Elin Olivkrona that the Second Inquisition is coming for her little prison buffet down at the border. Wherever you go, the people there will use you, or destroy you, to escape what's coming. And it's all happening because of Jasper's experiments. Do we tell Julian we already know that, and that he only knows it because he was listening in on the prince? We ought to tell Leto, after all, and cut a deal with the Camarilla. Do we ask why he's telling us this? I absolutely don't trust Julian, but once he starts talking, it's not like there's any way to stop the vampire. We're willing to hear Julian out, asking him what he wants us to do. Or do we not give a damn about the usurpers and their sorcery? After all, this is the fault of the Camarilla letting their favored clans run wild. Incredulously, we might ask, the Second Inquisition? You're sure they're active again? If they are, we need to watch ourselves, lest we be destroyed. He does seem like the type, doesn't he? Seems like no matter what option we choose, Julian's going to try to spin it in his own favor. And he is wont to monologuing. I agree with your earlier sentiment that the Second Inquisition seems like a significantly larger attack on the Masquerade than the other vampires seem to be worried about. Julian tells you that they're active in Tucson and they've been following him, which means that they're following you too. I need your help tracking them, to keep them away from my work. That's all. I won't even ask you to work against Prince Leto or the Camarilla. Just watch for the SI. But first, let me demonstrate how disposable you are to the prince. Now think back to what I taught you. Where is the best place to begin, no one? The walls? Leto's thralls? His pet bird, Riga? Another damn test. Julian used to love these, but though you sometimes appreciate the Camarilla and its traditions, Julian always had a knack for spotting spies. He watches you as you look around your little garage. Ought we do some technical analysis on the webcam, flipping open our phone and starting to scrutinize the cameras? Do we wonder if Prince Leto's eagle is watching us, heading outside to employ our keen senses and nature lore to look for her? With Magda's help, do we try and feel out the location and activities of Prince Leto's eagle using our animalism discipline? Do we bet the prince has set mortal spies to watch us and sneak out to hunt them down through the nearby streets, though we doubt it will be easy? Or do we simply tell Julian we have no intent to play his games? I agree that the webcam leans into our skills nicely, though I'm also prone to using Magda, as our Lobo is quite efficient and lovely. That said, I'm very curious why these webcams were in the place that the prince has placed us if they weren't placed there by the prince himself. Barring any objection, I think we can move forward with that. Instead of waiting inside, Julian sweeps your Honda for bugs. Once he's done, he doesn't say anything, even as sunrise approaches and you continue to work. You unscrew the webcam and check the serial numbers of its individual parts. Using your phone, you trace some of those serial numbers to domestic suppliers, then to defense contractors. You recognize some of these names from your time with Julian. These are SI suppliers, you whisper. Exactly, Julian says. So either the Second Inquisition installed that camera, or Prince Leto's people installed it, unaware of its provenance. Which is worse? Or Julian is lying from top to bottom in order to manipulate you. He takes out his phone, checks the time, and frowns a little. You're going to need better security than this if you stay here, he says. What are you going to rig up? Cameras? Poison gas, like we used in Fort Worth? Maybe, laser tripwires? Despite the late hour, it takes a while to get Julian off the subject of security. Finally, he drops his voice and says, You need to be ready for the SI, no one. Anyway, I've been thinking about Isla. Shut the fuck up. What if someone is still listening? We'd both be killed for what happened. We will seriously beat the shit out of Julian if he keeps talking. We regret what we did to that elder every night, and we've never forgiven Julian for leading us down that twisted path and away from the traditions of the kindred. Why bring up our crimes now? The black stains on our soul are what kept us from real power in the Camarilla. I don't regret destroying Isla and taking her power, only how useless it turned out to be. Let's not speak of those we've lost. We still remember the incredible, perverse sense of power when we drank Ayla's ancient blood, though we won't give Julian the pleasure of admitting it. Or do we acknowledge that there is true power in diablerie, even though it's heresy to say so? Are you planning more of that sort of thing, Julian? It certainly is, though it does open us up to the fears of the Camarilla finding out more about what we may or may not have done. Oh, you'll have to excuse me. I can feel the power of the sun rising. I think we ought to talk more about the diablerie. It is, after all, something that happened, and if the kindred of Tucson are going to know about it, more likely than not, Prince Leto already does. Thank you for joining us, Neshan. It was a pleasure. Get some rest, and may the sun not plague you for too long. The children of Hachim consider diablerie a sacred covenant, Julian says. Of course, I'm a terrible disappointment to my clan, but I'm proposing another adventure, dangerous and profitable. Who knows where it may lead? You instinctively lick your lips, remembering the taste of that elder blood. You contemplate the stolen power that still flows through your veins and wonder what more would taste like. It's almost sunrise, Julian says, checking his phone again. I'm late for prayer. He slips a business card out of his glitch hoodie and says, with my usurper contact dead, my old Denver company, 2100X, is on hiatus. But I'm still thinking about the future, the 22nd century. Think about that, no one. It's a sort of blank spot in our imagination. I mean, human imagination, too. We talked about the 21st century as kids. We can still, in a way, imagine the far future. But what's coming? What's it going to be like 80 or 100 years from now? Because I plan to be there, and I want your help. You're getting the impression that the Camarilla wants you. Maybe Prince Leto just wants you as a patsy in case the Second Inquisition hits him like the fist of God. But he hasn't mistreated you yet, and you know that the kindred of the Camarilla do not serve two masters. Julian can tell us the details tomorrow. Now he should go before he burns. We're not 100% in, but we're interested, and we do want to hear more. I lie, pretending to be interested while making it clear to anyone still listening, like Leto, that I'm not. I'll call you. I commit the card to memory, but we're hedging, not committing one way or another. What scheme of yours has turned out well, Julian? Please, just go. Fuck your hard sell, Julian. We're not saying no, but we get right up in his face to make it clear that we won't be yanked around. Not again. Never again. Maybe it would be better to discuss plans in my haven. After all these years, we really do miss Julian. I think Julian is a dangerous kind of beast to keep around that close, especially after having been away for as long as he has. That's an excellent point. But there's a fine line to balance, a tightrope act, if you will, between pissing off a dangerous beast and holding it at arm's length. I think you might be right. That allows us to stay in the good graces of the Camarilla and the new prince within whom we've found employment, but also keeps us open to the scheming jobs of this former acquaintance, if not friend. You can't just, Julian says, momentarily losing his equilibrium, but then he leans back, squeezing the bridge of his nose. Of course you can, he says. I'm sorry. Dawn is near, and you know how I get. Will you be okay here, no one? You shrug. If you're not, call me, he says, nodding to the card he gave you. Text me before you leave tomorrow night. He hands you a card with information about how to reach him, the motel where he's staying, and the location of a drop box. There's a little glyph like a knife doodled on the card. A charambit, he says. I'm not exactly a regular member of Clan Banu Hakim, so that's what I'm using instead of the old 2100 logo to mark my holdings. No name yet, just the mark. Look for it, no one. Then he opens the door to your little office room, scans the shadows, and disappears down the garage, in no evident hurry despite the proximity of sunrise. The metal door swings shut. I think we might call it a night at this point. I believe we're almost to the end of chapter 3, but we're at an integral decision for moving forward. And to be quite honest, I think my voice might be giving all it's got. I think so as well. Let's see. Yes, this is the beginning of the ending of one night and the beginning of another, and the decision of how we move forward with our journey. I'd like to thank you, Moose, for sticking around and offering some decisions for our would-be neonate to continue along this night road. I'm looking forward to continuing this journey and seeing where things lead us as we continue down the path of Tucson's desert-worn roads. Our keeper of Elysium, Astrophysicis, would like everybody to know that she's made a pepperoni pizza in our bed.
It's pretty doughy.
And it's fairly doughy. Thus concludes another night, another set of choices, another pulse of sluggish blood through the veins of our kindred. I think I can speak for many of us when I say we look forward to continuing this journey down the night road and learning where our struggles with Julian, Prince Leto, the Camarilla, Dove, and existence as a whole will lead us. Thank you for joining us tonight and in the many nights to come. And I'm sure we'll see one another again soon when the sun has set and the moon rises high above the horizon. Thank you for joining us tonight, friends. Our Familius waves goodbye.